Hello and welcome to the Iceman channel. Today we're gonna do a reacting video on a talk from DEF CON 31. It's called Unlocking Doors from Half a Continent Away. It's by Trevor Stevado and Sam Haskins, and they are covering a topic that we are calling in the RFID hacking community relay attacks, when you're relaying data from one point to another one. Let's get started.
Thanks for coming out. This is our talk, Unlocking Doors from Half a Continent Away. I hope you have some fun. So, this isn't working. All right. My name is Trevor Stevado. I'm the founder of a small cybersecurity company up in Canada called Loudmouth Security. I've been doing offensive stuff for, I think, counted about 15 years now, but I just stopped counting and put 12 plus in the slides. My biggest personal or professional achievement, it was winning a DEF CON Black Badge back at DEF CON 26. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sam Haskins. I'm a hacker working for Loudmouth Security. I'm also a current computer science student at Carleton University up in Ottawa in the computer and internet security stream. I've been hacking things since I was 12, at least. I have 2 CVEs from ages 16 and 19. That was just last year. This is my second year at DEF CON, and I'm really excited and happy to be here. I'm just a little bit scared.
All right, so we're going to be talking about physical access systems. So just to give you a quick background of all the components, you have a card that has the credential on it, the reader that's going to read that credential off the card, send that information back to a back-end access controller that will validate that credential, make sure it's valid for the door it's trying to open. If it is, it'll send a signal to the lock, opens the door, open sesame, you're golden. We're going to be focusing mostly, entirely on the card to reader interactions. And in that space, there's quite a few technologies that have been a part of this. And we'll go through some of them just for history's sake, but our attack is going to be on some of the newest technologies, MyFair Identifier and SEOS. So the purpose of physical access, what it's trying to do is it's trying to validate that there's a physical presence of a credential at a specific time. So that's what the reader is trying to do. And so because of that, there's some ways that we have come up with, people have come up to attack it. The first one is the most basic card cloning attack. If you can see a card, capture the data off of it, write that to a new card, present that to a reader, it has no idea that it's a different card. So you have a duplicate and you can authenticate as the original card. A kind of offshoot of that one is a downgrade attack. So if you have a technology that can't be cloned, but you can read it with a standard reader, you can take the data that it's trying to send to the back end, encode that on a lower frequency or lower security card, and if the reader will accept both, then you've duplicated the card just as effectively.
Kind of funny about how this now is common knowledge. Yeah, physical presence of a credential. Yeah, that is problematic with if you just hold a card. The card can be genuine, but the person behind the card holding it might not be the one that you think it is. How do you attack that? 2 factors, multiple factors, like PIN code. Problem with things like biometrics is that you can't change your fingerprints. You can't change your iris scans either. So once that is out, yeah. And that comes to how it's stored on the data as well, on the cards. But yeah, let's get it going here.
The other category that I don't see very much in the physical security space, but we just put it in for posterity, is the replay attack. So if you can capture a sequence of messages between a card and a reader and then replay that, you may be able to trick a reader into thinking that there is a credential there at that time.
Replay attacks is more common among other systems than physical access systems, like EMV. Replay is a little bit bigger there. Yeah. So within the scope of RFID hacking, different attacks are more prominent for some areas of it.
And then the final one, the one that we're going to be talking most about and doing the demos of today, is the relay attack. And you might be familiar with this in the space of car thefts, where people are putting readers up next to your door and trying to relay the signal from your car key fobs to your car. The same kind of thing that we're doing with RFID cards. We're going to try to relay an RFID card over a very long distance and just show you how that can be done. So to give you some context about how we got started down this path of research, it's good to know what the history of access control technologies are and what the flaws were that kind of led them to where they are today. So one of the original technologies, the HID procs, very simplistic technology. Once the card got energized, it broadcasts its ID. Anybody around can listen to it. Super insecure. There's no encryption on it. You can buy a reader from Amazon for very cheap. Fun fact, my very first DEF CON was DEF CON 21. I went to go see the Bishop Fox talk on the Tastic RFID thief.
That talk is a classic. If you've never seen it, see it, watch it. You can find all these talks in the amazing RFID talks GitHub. So you can easily just see a list of talks that we have assembled, which we are curated, where we think is, if you're interested in this topic.
Where he took a garage door reader, was a high-powered garage door reader, and basically tagged onto the data lines so he could record the card data, but that extended his read range from a couple of inches to a couple of feet. And he would walk around with that in a briefcase and collect cards. It's a pretty fun talk. I still have the piece that I got from it.
And all the red teamers and pen testers has what we call a weaponized reader. Military people like, words like weaponized. But yeah, this is the talk that laid the foundation of just, instead of trying to get in short, what he talked about is that we couldn't get licensed from HID or other genuine card packs, access control system developers, vendors, to take their gear and say that you're gonna, sniff things out and make it mobile. Of course not. So if you take that agenda away, or the whole problem area away, Bishop Fox, they describe that if you just take an existing reader and put some battery on it and listen to what it sends out, and then you can collect it like that, and you don't break any patterns or anything like that when you build it. You just take a normal reader and it acts just like it should do, but it's mobile and saves the data in that sense. So yeah, weaponized.
And it kind of inspired some of the stuff that moved me forward into this talk. So HID realized that that wasn't a good idea. So they came up with another version called the HID I-Class. And it was designed to protect card cloning replays. The way it did that was it had a key between the card and the reader that was a shared key that only they knew. HID created one shared key between the card and reader for most of the systems that they released. If you wanted to have a special key, you had to ask HID to create a new one for you, and they called that the elite key system. So only your readers and your cards would use that shared key. And it was done through a proprietary cipher that they created, which was then reverse engineered by some researchers, and they came up with a key recovery attack where you can recover the keys of any, not just the standard, but even the elite keyed readers.
Fun fact. Write in the comments below if you know what the crypto is actually called and named. And Garcia's papers and Heart of Darkness paper is a classic and a must-read document for anyone who is interested into this field of RFID hacking. It's a lovely piece of hacking.
So now it's trivially simple to create a copy of an I-Class card using things like the Proxmark.
Oh, it's not just the Proxmark today. The Flipper Zero has full support for anything I-Class related or HID related today, given the new Cedar app and NARD add-on that you put to it, and it uses HID SAMs. So it's trivial, really trivial.
Another kind of entry in the mid-range RFID is the MIFARE Classic. So we don't see this very often used in access control, but it's kind of the precursor to the DeskFire EV1 that sometimes does get into access control. So we thought we'd throw it in as well. It uses a different mechanism. It has keys for each sector, and you can have 2 keys that you can define as a read or a write key. But again, they used a proprietary algorithm for that crypto, and again, it was reverse engineered by a team of researchers. So very...
Not just University of Radboud, the Dutch ones, also the German ones, Carsten and Henrik Plötz, and Nefemba in Serbia or Croatia. I don't know. Don't kill me for it.
Easy to copy and clone MIFARE Classic cards. I think this is about the point where both HID and NXP, who make the MIFARE cards, kind of realized that maybe making proprietary crypto was not a good idea. And you can see that in a lot of their marketing about the new technologies. So the new one for HID is SEOS, and MIFARE, NXP came out with the MIFARE DeskFire, and there's a couple variants of that, EV1, 2, and 3. And so they all use industry standard ciphers. And the worthwhile thing to note is that EV1 came out in 2006. So 17 years since EV1 came out, and SEOS after that in 2012, there's been no public techniques disclosed to clone a SEOS card. The only attack that is currently known, well, before what we're going to show today, I guess, is the downgrade attack. So if you have a SEOS reader that has the standard key set and your card is in the standard key set, you could read the data off the back end, program that onto a low frequency or a lower security card, and create a duplicate that way.
Well, we can conclude that this talk was made in 2023, and they're not covering HID's massive changes for the config card hacks that was happening in December and January, this end of 2023 and beginning of 2024.
But that can be easily defeated by using elite keyed systems, because then you would have to have a reader that has that same elite key. So you'd have to, if you're targeting a facility, you'd have to go and rip that reader off the wall, and I'm pretty sure they're going to notice that. Or you have the other thing they can do is they can configure their readers to only accept the SEOS or DeskFire cards. So
and that's what happened right now. All the legacy class technologies up to I-class SE, it's all defined as legacy. And they're really pushing hard agenda for SEOS and DeskFire. And the thing with, ripping a reader out of a door and thinking that it will be noted, they will most likely note that, take notice of that there's a missing reader. But I think they just will put a new one there. I doubt that they will do a whole key rolling scheme. If you have 10,000 cards out, that takes time and effort and money. So, if you just consider it, if you go there, rip off a reader, and then they're going to change all the keys for the first time, and then you go there, 3 weeks later, you rip off another reader, and then they have to do this again. Then 4 weeks later, you rip off the next one, and then somewhere they're going to be like, fuck it, we don't care anymore. And I think that's how, human nature will work. Interesting vector, though. I don't say that you should do it. I am saying that it's an interesting way.
If you clone it to a lower frequency or a lower security card, it's useless because the reader won't accept it. Now, you might come into situations where they have different configurations around the building. In a loading bay, they might use a dual frequency reader, but most often the secured, protected areas of a high security building are going to be protected by elite keyed SEOS or high frequency only cards. So, and that was actually the scenario that we faced when we were doing a red team engagement. So that's what led to the motivation. If we can't break the crypto, we go for a relay attack instead. And I'm going to pass it to Sam to talk about how we did that.
Thank you. So first, I'm just going to talk a bit about the relay attack scenario, so what this would look like from an attacker deploying it. So basically, you're going to send one of your guys to stand beside a legitimate employee of the place you're trying to access on public transit or some other environment like that, and then they can hold a proxmark fairly close to the guy's pass. Then you send one of your other guys right up to the door and just badge in, and you need some way of communicating between the two proxmarks. We use the internet as a backbone, which is super convenient because it's available like everywhere with cell networks and stuff, but it theoretically could be anything there. So here's the architecture of our original attack here. The first version used laptops instead of mobile devices. We since migrated to that. But as you can see, we have the real card and then two proxmarks acting as a fake reader and a fake card. And then if you follow that green line there, messages.
All right, let me see if I have some proxmarks for you guys to watch. Let me see. Let's do this. And then we take another card like this. All right. No, we don't. So you have a proxmark. here's your valid credential that you want to relay. And you have, this is a fake reader that we're saying over 14A, that's the normal communication. Then that one went over to a laptop, and then over internet, and then goes to another proxmark that actually is presented to a door reader here on this side. Oops, like this. So this is what we're trying to describe. This is the communication over here, how these two is going to talk to each other.
Go from the real reader all the way to the real card, and then responses go all the way back. You repeat that about 10 or 12 times or whatever, and then the door opens. Even this original attack did use over the internet. We had a WebSocket connection between the two laptops. And in this original attack, we also used Bluetooth between the laptop and the phone. Between the laptop and the proxmark, just to get them a bit further apart and not have to run wires. So because all of the messages are generated by a real card and a real reader, the contents are guaranteed to be correct. If they weren't, the system wouldn't work in the first place and legitimate cards would not open the doors. So the only way that readers could detect our attacks is by detecting timing variations. And that's because the round trip time of request response over about an inch between like the legitimate scenario versus Ottawa to Vegas is significantly shorter. So we were investigating, can we make the readers support longer than normal timings?
And what is normal timings? So relay attacks is nothing new. What we're talking about here has been done before, and I know people have done it, and it's used in different scenarios as well. So what they have here is that they're based on a proxmark that has not been done publicly before. I'm talking about, and they're going to go into talking about how the 14A protocol, the ISO 1443A protocol is going to have, and the levels of timings that's there. And then we're going to talk most likely about the ISO 7816-4 level, where you don't have the timing issue at all. Once you're there, it's built into the protocol that you can just extend it. So yeah, so you do know how let's go like this. You do know how a reader talks with a card by this inductive field. So it's not just that it's timing, it's just, it's also powered by this. And, so the reader just talks directly to it. It's quite fast in that sense. If you look at the timings for the protocols, different times for different protocols. And then you have to add the round trip over the internet here to the next reader. And that is what takes time. So imagine that you have Bluetooth to a laptop over internet, and internet laptop to a Bluetooth proxmark, and then presenting it to a reader. So yeah, that's the challenge.
And it turns out that we can. There's a few mechanisms. So all of the high frequency cards that we've discussed so far, so the 13.56 megahertz ones, are based on ISO 14443 TAC4 type A, or just 14A, since that's a lot of letter soup. And most access controls would be based on the standard.
Yes, letter soup. Thank you.
A few that aren't, but most of them are. And this is analogous to like how HTTP is built on top of TCP. This provides like a messaging layer that the application-specific data would travel over. But before any application layer data, so the SEOS protocol or the DESRF protocol, before any of that happens, the card and the reader must exchange parameters in what we call the 14A handshake. And this is both documented very nicely. It's an ISO standard.
Handshake? It's called anti-collision. Stop it.
It's also not encrypted or authenticated at all. There's a 16-bit CRC on some parts, but the details of that are public, so we can mess with that. So let's have a quick look. So this diagram here shows a real handshake that we captured between a real SEOS card and a real reader. You don't have to understand most of it. The spec is about 100 pages, but there are a few parts I'd like to highlight here. So the first message I'd like to highlight is this UID CLN message. Now, the standard actually has a mechanism for the card to give a UID to the reader. SEOS doesn't use this because it's completely unauthenticated, as said earlier, but other mechanisms do. But SEOS actually just provides a random value each time. So
true and not true. SEOS uses random in the anti-collision part, but they have what they are calling an authenticated ID. So if you want to have a card UID properly, you have to authenticate, you have to do the handshake, the anti-collision part, then you have to authenticate to the card, to the SEOS card, and then you can ask the card, send me your real UID, and then get it out. That is then used for the encryption, decryption in the data that is stored. So, true but not true.
You can't even use this with readers that don't support the SEOS protocol just by falling back to that number. And then the other thing I like to highlight is that ATS message there, and specifically that blue byte, which is interface byte TB1. ATS here is answer select, with our ATS being request answer select. And the important byte of TB1 there is the frame waiting time integer, which is coded in the high nibble. And that defines the frame waiting time, and I'll explain what that is in just a second, in accordance with that little equation there. And the FWT tells the reader how long to wait between frames. So after the reader sends a request, it will wait that amount of time before expecting a response from the card. And if it doesn't receive one at that point, it will usually restart the entire authentication attempt from the beginning. However, this is unauthenticated. It's sent by the card, which we are pretending to be, and we can mess with it. And if you notice at just the end of that equation there, there's that exponential term.
Yes, it is a problem with this though, where the access control manufacturers is breaking the standard. So this is the standard, the ISO standard says that this is how it should be like, and that's true. Normal is unencrypted, and yes, you can decide like that. However, what's common now from HID or ASA is that they are really twisting down, tuning down the timings and breaking the standard a bit. Great, isn't it? Really great.
You can make that go pretty high. So after the 14A handshake is complete, it goes into the SEOS protocol, which is a bunch of random bytes, and I have no idea what they mean, but who cares?
Funny thing is that we now have a better annotation for this in the Proxmox client. So you would know what that is. A little bit more, not the encrypted parts though, but before that.
Because these are generated by a real card and a real reader. We know they're right. We just need to get them from point A to point B. Yes. A lot of the messages in the 14A handshake are sent before that ATS message. So the modified frame waiting time won't apply yet, and therefore we can't relay them. The latency over any internet connection, even basic Ethernet, will be far too long. It's messed up by print statements, in fact. So that initial 14A handshake does have to be handled on the Proxmarks themselves, but thankfully it can really just be hard-coded for the most part. It doesn't really vary, but we'll get into a few more details on that later. And as for how long we can get the reader to wait between frames, if we set the FWI to its highest value of 14, we can make it wait 4,949 milliseconds, which is almost 5 seconds. I'm not sure why that's supported by the standard, because I don't see a real use case, but it's very convenient for us.
Quite simple. I've been told, and that is because some crypto engines in the cards. Remember that I see some cards are very, very slow. They're not very fast, and they're powered by the field from the reader. So we have limited amount of power to use in that sense, and they take a long time to do some of the crypto derivatives that is used for some high crypto things, and that can take 2-3 seconds. So yeah, here you go. You have to have 5 seconds before you can get a reply.
There is another technique in the 14A standard that we can use to bypass the round trip time check, which is waiting time extensions. And that's a mechanism that applies to just the next message, not all subsequent messages, but it could also be repeated, which is nice. So theoretically, if you keep the fake card by the reader for 20 minutes and it just keeps sending these, you could have 20 minutes of time. But in practice, at least with the readers that we tested, we found it was less reliable. So we're mostly relying on modifying the FWT. I think a big problem with the WTX is it does need to be sent for each message. So if it's missed once, the entire authentication attempt fails. So our original design was implemented as an extension to the already existing and open source HF Relay Proxmark standalone mode, which was originally written by Salvador Mendoza. That was to relay credit cards, actually, which was pretty cool. And we made some changes to allow viewing the SEOS protocol, or really any protocol, instead of just credit cards, and also adding the long-range internet component instead of just over Bluetooth like it was originally. And this original design was strongly coupled with the Blue Shark Bluetooth add-on. Messages were conveyed from Proxmark to laptop and then sent over IP. And we did have a lot of success with this design, the big highlight being unlocking a door in Ottawa with a card in Florida, because my colleague over here has a vacation home in Florida, so we sent him down with a card and just tried that out, and it worked after a few tries.
I like the brag. I can also come and visit in Florida.
There were, however, some fairly major reliability issues in this original design. So the Blue Shark add-on does come with an integrated rechargeable battery, and we did like that design at first because it's a lot more convenient for like real deployments, like actually standing beside someone on the bus and trying to relay their card, than running a cable up their sleeve. You get to put it a bit further away. You don't have that whole cable to deal with. But the ability of the Proxmark that's pretending to be a reader to read the card, which is its job, is very dependent on the battery level. If it's too high, we get bad reads. If it's too low, we also get bad reads. We're not entirely sure why that happens.
That does not make sense. However, distance between card and Proxmark makes more sense. So for 14A, the Proxmark antenna is kind of loud and shouts much. So if you put the card like that, you will have an issue, right? Usually you have to have 1 to 2 centimeters distance or offsetting, between for antenna. So yeah, if you do this, you will have an issue reading card, and some cards need to be like this.
We think it's related to like the voltage level being output by the battery, but we're not 100% sure on that. It did prove very frustrating. Like while we were developing this, we developed little rules of thumb, like when it starts failing, plug it in for 12 minutes and try again. And that kind of worked, but it wasn't very nice. The other problem was latency. So we can make the reader accept ridiculous amounts of latency, but on the card side, real cards are designed under the assumption that the reader will respond within at most a few milliseconds, and typically much faster. And we blow that assumption out of the water by several orders of magnitude when we're doing this over longer ranges. So we find that the card sometimes forgets that it's supposed to be in the middle of an authentication attempt, and this happens increasingly often as the latency increases.
I don't think it's about forgets. I think that's just in the normal state machine that it will time out.
This isn't necessarily a deal breaker by itself, because it just means you need to retry from the beginning. So if your guy's still standing beside the guy in public transit, you're good to go, but maybe it's a little suspicious if you're standing beside a reader for 2 minutes waiting for the door to open. Not the best. And different cards could be more resilient to this. Most of our observations here were with SEOS cards in particular. We actually only tested with Desfire for the first time earlier today before we went to sleep. It was hard to source a card. So between that and the battery issues, the initial design was not reliable. It was usable, not really reliable, but usable within the same city. And even then, I'd say this was a practical attack that higher security, higher value facilities would be more concerned about. But it was much harder to make it work over longer distances. And even in the same city, it wasn't perfectly reliable.
I think that's more an IP, TCP IP choice. That's by far the slowest communications. If you're going to go through your laptop over Wi-Fi and onto internet, and then your Wi-Fi and to your laptop, that can be delays there. Maybe you should try UDP or something like that instead as a faster protocol.
So our revised design, we incorporated quite a few changes. So first off, we swapped laptops with phones. Laptop on your backpack is fine, but phone in your pocket is even better. And then more importantly, we swapped that little Bluetooth link there with a serial link. And we're also powering the Proxmark from the phone over that serial link. So we knocked out the battery and we knocked out Bluetooth. Bluetooth was nice, but Bluetooth Classic is a horrible protocol, and 50 milliseconds of latency on each side, 100 milliseconds total, when Florida to Ottawa is only a 99 millisecond ping. That's almost doubling it. And
yeah. The Bluetooth communications between the phone and the Proxmark is ridiculously slow. It's what is it, 115 and 20 boards. So yeah, nah, that's not fast, not at all.
We didn't really want to eat that, and getting rid of that really did increase our reliability. Additionally, just operated over a cell network where phones will not have public IPs. Instead of them connecting directly to each other via WebSocket, we have a little relay server just hosted in DigitalOcean in between them. So the software in our revised design is called HF Card Hopper. It's a new standalone module for Iceman's Proxmark 3 firmware.
You said it. That's fun.
We're releasing it later this week whenever I get around to doing a pull request. It's inspired by Salvador Mendoza's HF Relay, the original design, but doesn't share any code. And it has the code to trick readers into using a longer frame waiting time. It can relay any ISO 14443A 14A based protocol. And it actually has support for relaying that initial UID and DATS. That doesn't matter so much for SEOS because the UID is random each time. But for Desfire, that UID actually contributes material to later cryptographic operations. So to get it to match up on both sides, you do need to get that right. Now, because that's sent over DATS, we can't actually relay that in real time because the modified frame rating time won't apply. But it doesn't actually change. For when it matters, it doesn't change. So Desfire cards always give the same UID. So if you just read it once, then transmit it, then the Proxmark can set itself up to emulate that specific card. And that doesn't have to happen in real time, which is nice. And it works with Blueshark and our custom hardware, which handles that serial link, which my colleague Trevor will talk to you about.
Yeah, so as Sam mentioned, we wanted to swap out the Bluetooth module mainly because of the latency issues. So we came up with another module that is USB to.
I got one. I got four, but they broke down in the transport, so I only got one that's valid. So yay! Thanks for the hardware, Trevor.
UART bridge, basically. If you're familiar with things like the Shikra, it uses the FT232 chip that's in the Shikra. We just modified the design to have a USB-C, which is much more convenient for connecting to modern phones, and then a ribbon cable for connecting to the Proxmark. We chose to use a ribbon cable to connect to that interface on the Proxmark for a couple of reasons. A, we think it's a little bit faster. We're directly connecting to the Proxmark over.
And now you're wondering, what are you talking about? And I will show you. On a Proxmark, here is the FPC connector that he's talking about that you can connect to. That's where the blue shark connects, and now basically you see it's gonna go like that.
Where you start, whereas if you're connecting to the USB on the side of the Proxmark, that's actually an emulated modem, so that would add a little bit of latency. But also, this makes it completely interchangeable with the Blue Shark add-on. So if you wanted to use the Blue Shark for wire-free, our emulator, like standalone mode, will still work with the Blue Shark and with this interchangeably. We did have one little hiccup when creating these and ordering these for DEF CON. It turns out that just casually mentioning that you need a 14-pin, 0.5 millimeter spaced ribbon cable adapter is not enough to make sure it actually gets ordered properly. So, you know, lessons learned. We managed to get it reordered, rebuilt. Props to one of my colleagues who actually disassembled half a dozen of these. And if you see one of these, I'll show you. If you come up, I'll show you. There's a lot of tiny little components in here. He took every single component off and resoldered it onto a new board with the right pin header, and that's the board that's being used in Ottawa right now for the other side of this demo. So appreciate that. That was a lot of hard work, I know. And then the other thing we added is a custom Android app. So to make it easy to interface with the Proxmark, we created an Android app that will bridge the communication between the FTDI and therefore the Proxmark and the relay server. And it supports card or reader modes. You can alternate it, and it supports SEOS and DesFire cards, and you can adjust the frame weighting values for your specific target. And it also will handle hardware resets because we came across a lot of those. So we needed to build that in to be able to quickly reset and start over again. So it's quite easy to start over with that. But I will say it is my first Android app. I've never done this before, and we kind of just went function over style. I know it's pretty ugly, but it works.
That is kind of awesome, though. One of my big issues with developing myself is that I am not a app developer, and I know that you could do much, much more funnier things if I were.
All right, so let's go over some of the results before we get into the demo. So we've tested this on a variety of different HID readers. So the first couple are older generation HID multi-class readers, the RP40 and the RPK40, a couple of different models, but these were ones that will accept both low frequency and high frequency cards. So there is some requirement for them to adjust the frame waiting time because older cards are a bit slower. So it makes sense that adjusting them was a successful attack. But the one that was a little more surprising was the Signo readers from HID, which are their latest and greatest readers. And there's 3 variants of them, 00, 0102. And that just, the difference in those is the protocols that it supports. So 01 is kind of like your multi-class. It will support the low frequency and high frequency. Sorry, that's the 00. The 01, I think, is the only SEOS protocol, SEOS and DesFire, and then 02 is SEOS, DesFire, and smartphones. So that one's the one that, to me, is surprising that the frame waiting time attack works on because, especially for the 01 and 02, they're only talking to high-frequency cards that are, fast, quick responding cards. There's really no need for them to have to accept an increased waiting time.
Normal. It's in the standard. They are compliant with the standard. So makes perfect sense that we are. Sorry. No shame on HID for that one.
In terms of the card technologies, most of our research was focused on SEOS because, as I said, this was motivated by a specific engagement we were trying to get into a building. But we have since, as of last night at 1 a.m. in the morning, acquired an EV1 card and compatible reader, and we're able to test, and it does work for EV1 cards as well. The other ones that we haven't tested with, and we want to, are the EV2 and EV3. The problem with that is, so cards are not super common in HID access control systems. And so getting an EV1 card or an EV2 card that is programmed with a HID secure identity object, which is the object that they write in the card for the reader to unpack and pull the identification out of. So to get a card coded for that is quite challenging and quite expensive. So we haven't come across those cards yet.
You would buy an normal CP1000 encoder from HID, and then you would buy credits, what they have, and then you would just encode it yourself with open formats. The CP1000 is of course $1,500 or something like that. Maybe you can find it secondhand, but if you're doing this as a pen test or red teamer, that's a no-brainer, I guess.
But the interesting thing about those is that NXP does have a patent for being able to do the proximity check for communication devices. So based on that, these two technologies should be immune to our relay attack because they should be able to detect the proximity of the card, but it's something we would like to verify and try for ourselves. In terms of distances, we started out in our lab just across the room 12 feet. One of us took the readers home, went back to from our house to the office, tried that. And then, as Sam mentioned, when I went down to Florida, I took the card with me. We relayed it from Florida back to Ottawa, which is about 1,400 miles of distance that we're going across. And then earlier today in the green room, we finally got a successful test of doing Vegas to Ottawa. And I say finally got a successful, we just didn't have an opportunity because production issues on the card hoppers. It actually worked quite smoothly, quite well. So that's about 2,400 miles now we've gone. Can we do it on stage? Is that possible?
Demo demons. Come on, do it.
And so I better text my colleague on the other side who's waiting for us to say we're ready. So I'll tell them to join now. We also would like to test this further. So if there are people here that are interested in collaborating with us, if you live farther away, Brazil or other places that, we can try this out and see how far we can push this distance, come chat with us afterwards. All right, so we are good to go. They are ready on their side. Let's jump on. Hello. I don't think the sound is working. Welcome, Noon and Liz, to DEF CON. Everyone say hello. All right, so Liz is just going to demonstrate right now that she can't get into the door. It's locked, right? And just presenting the reader that she has to the door is not going to work because we're not relaying a card at this point. So if she puts it up against the door, if you put the thing up against the reader, yeah, exactly, it doesn't work because we need to relay the card. All right, you ready to go, Sam? Liz, you ready to go? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Thumbs up. Let's see. A little unwieldy. I think we need to do a reset on her side. One sec, sorry. This is what happens when we do it live, right?
It's always like that. Oh, it's awesome though. It's an awesome demo.
She's working with the pre-production version, the one that my colleague put together by hand. So it's not the most production-ready system. So we'll give her another second here. All right, she's good to go. We're good to go. All right, go for it, Sam. Put it closer to the reader. Yeah. All right, we're going to try it one more time. If not, we'll switch. Just pull back, Liz, and cancel. We'll try again.
If that is a Proxmox she's trying to present to the reader, she does not need to be that close. No. What you do need to do is move a Proxmox across the reader field so it detects the change.
Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. If this doesn't work, we'll switch to the video of us doing it previously in the green room, just to prove. Okay, I think she's good. And it's not working. All right, well, I guess that's where we're going to jump to video. Demo gods proved too much for us. Thanks anyway, Liz. Noon, thank you. All right, so we kind of planned for this, so that's fine. So this is what it should have looked like. So when she puts it up to the reader, it does take some time because we're relaying these messages one at a time over the internet. So it's not as quick as normally when you push it up against the reader. But after a certain amount of time, it does work, and she can open the door. So on the phone side, this is what you would have seen if you're looking at the phone. So we connect the card hopper. Card hopper is the term we're giving this board. We connect it to the phone. We put the phone into reader mode. We don't adjust the frame waiting time because it's fine. And then we start seeing all the messages flying back and forth. You can see there's quite a few of them going back and forth. We don't really care what they are. They're right. They're fine. And that's at that point we're done.
That would be the authentication process, and then it would be the reader extracting the card credential encrypted, and then it would decode that one, and then it would decide to open the door or not.
We've opened the door. So yeah, I said we don't care about the waiting time. We default it to 14, which is the max. So we're just leaving it at the max, and it's working fine. On our side here, this is what you would see. So this was us in the green room. So I put the card up against the reader and wait, and it goes through that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then, boom, we're done. So it does take more time. It is a little bit more conspicuous. It's not necessarily the stealthiest of attack, but hey, being able to relay a card from here 2,400 miles away, I think is pretty good. So the other slide a couple other slides we wanted to show, the prevalence of the different technologies. So unfortunately, there's a weird trend in the access control industry that they don't necessarily move to the newest technologies right away. We're still using a lot of the old technologies. So the 125K HID proc stuff I mentioned still has about 32% of the market. Very small market percentage for the SEOS, and even smaller for some of the MyFair cards.
Jesus Christ. Look at that, 32% for this completely insecure Prox 2 cards. Wow. 35% for magnetic stripes. Wow. Holy macaroni. That is bananas. I do understand why we don't do it. You know, it's a cost thing. You know, if you install a system, the vendors expect it to be installed like for 20, 30 years. So yeah, I get it. And, you know, but imagining us having that and having to sell this old technology, and wow. But it also proves a point about what I call, it's not secure. It's secure enough. It should give the end user a feeling of security, and it should deter people like, oh, this is most likely secure. But with talks like this, you kind of understand that's not the case. And with tools like, you know, when they weaponize the flipper like that, And we also realize that that is just a charade. The Emperor's new clothes. But it's no, I have to say, the Emperor's old clothes.
Individually. But it's interesting to note that these technologies have been around for a while. Like CEOS came out in 2012, EV1 2006. So,
it's a cost thing as well. I mean, you can get a proxy card for a couple of cents. But if you go for a CEOS card, you're going to pay like what, $2, $2.30? That's a huge difference. It's a definitely cost thing. Remember that. Business doesn't always go for the most secure just because it's secure. It's price or cost and risk. So they evaluate risk. Someone getting in. If someone wants to get in, they're gonna get in. You can tailgate. You can do a lot of things. This kind of high. This attack of relaying across the world is it's odd in the sense of getting in. You would most likely have it easier to get in otherwise. So I guess the purpose of a relay attack in this sense is that you want to take the most secure technology and prove that you can do it. But you also see, like we're showing in the demo here, that the CEOS card, you have to have proximity to that card and you have to do it for a long time. I mean, you need to get that on that side, and then you have to time it with a person trying to enter a door on the other side. So that takes some coordination skills to do this. And then all of a sudden we are like on state actors, if you think about it. I don't think a pen test would do like send a team down to Brazil and then, because there's a holiday and then someone in Europe is going to stand and open the door at the targets. No.
It's unfortunate that the industry has not adopted these as quickly as they probably should have. Was there something else you wanted to say? Right. So yeah, the other point that we wanted to make was that most of the ones that are currently in use, aside from the EV2, EV3, are vulnerable to some sort of attack at this point. So most of the access control industry is still vulnerable. So also want to talk a little bit about HID's response. So we did a responsible disclosure of this through BugCrowd. We disclosed it to BugCrowd on December 9th of 2022. It was triaged by HID on January 17th, and then we got their final response on March 10th. I'm sorry, I'm just not showing the presentation mode. I should have switched back. That's why. All right. One of the recommendations we made to HID was that they should limit that frame waiting time integer, not accept values over what are strictly necessary. And they didn't like that idea because it would put them out of compliance with the ISO spec, and it would impact their customers' needs for backward compatibility. I don't know any customer that needs a 5 millisecond or 5 second waiting time.
Yes. Like I said, that would be against the specs or the ISO standard. So you can't say that you're ISO compliant if you're not. And then Trevor or Sam, I don't think you understand HID's customers. They have many, many more than we can imagine across the whole world, global scale. So you just don't mess with those things, remember? And remember also the timeline that installed systems are like used for a long, long, long time. So yeah, I totally understand that response. And for me, that would have been acceptable as a response. I was like, yeah, fine, great. Just be aware that this is possible, and we have now weaponized it and made a card hopper tool that, makes you susceptible to this one.
For backward compatibility, but that's what they felt like. The other comment that got to me a little bit was that the majority of their end users do not see relay attacks as a viable threat.
Now that's a good one though. That is a hard one. And usually, this is why DEF CON and Black Hat exist in that sense, and is to prove that until you actually build it, you build the tool, you prove it to them that this is viable and it doesn't cost very much money, and this is a stupid thing not to take care of. It's not viable. And then, on the other hand, by building it and making open source and open hardware, you're actually weaponizing that argument. So yeah, I can understand that HID previously used to sue the shit out of people crossing left and right and up and down, and they have a disclosure program via bug crowd. So yeah, it's morally it's just saying.
That was the motivation for coming here today, for doing the additional work of creating the pieces. We wanted to show that this is a viable, feasible threat, something that could be done with simple technology from the Proxmark, a small little add-on in the relay server.
To be honest, they were not the first. They just made it for Proxmark. I have seen the NFC relay was talked about 3 years ago, which uses Android app and Android built-in NFC support, so you don't need a Proxmark at all. And I have heard other product owners talk about how they look into relay attacks, and they take that damn seriously for those, and it's been weaponized before. That's all I can say about that. So yes, I can say that people are taking it seriously, and those who are aware, they do.
The one comment that they did make, which has, I think, some good validity, is that their end users that are concerned will typically add a second factor, PIN or biometric, and some will use their mobile credentials. Yeah,
PIN and biometrics. Yeah, it's it just proves that you're there. So, like I said, the original problem is you have a card and you want to make sure that the person holding the card is the right person. So if you add a multi-factor by doing a PIN, if someone have to physically press the PIN, knowing the PIN, that's one thing. And then if you biometrics, someone else to do it. But they've proven how to clone biometrics, like your fingerprints. You can also update the fingerprint data on a card, and you replay that one instead for like iCloud. So that's just that's just silly how simple that is. And what I see right now is a lot of talk about mobile credentials. So my expectation is that there will be talks about it this year at DEF CON, and it's going to be more and more of that the future years that's coming.
But the one problem that we see with this is, okay, now everybody has to enter a 6-digit PIN. Can you imagine the lineups going in and out of that building? 6-digit PINs or biometrics are good, but they're not always the most usable or user-friendly, especially when you're trying to manage large amounts of people going in, coming out.
Same thing there still. Secure enough, and military facilities, they are high secured. They have multiple entries. They don't care that it takes 2 seconds longer. And that's just how it works. It's for consumer people, for corporates. Transit system or whatever, that those are the ones that complain about that. But on an airport, if it takes you 2 seconds to open the door to get in, not an issue. Even if it's like 500 people, it's going to check in the morning, because that's how that's what they need to be secure. But for commercial grades or privateers, like multi-tenant stores, buildings and storage, nah, we're never going to do it.
All right, so that's the end of our presentation. We have some extra of the little boards, the card hopper boards that we printed, the correct ones now. So we also run the embedded CTF, and so if you come play in the embedded village CTF, the top 3 teams will get one of those boards. So come and play. Or if you're interested in collaborating, if you want to try testing this at further distances, we're happy to share with you a card and a board, and we can see how far we can push this. I'm
going to stop this video right now, and final thought is it's always fun to talk about different villages. You know, normally at DEF CON you will find me at the Radio Frequency Village, and you will see me this year there as well. I hope that you all enjoyed this reacting video for this great talk and great project. They made amazing add-on. They made hardware, custom hardware. They made an Android app, and you know, they did a standalone mode and updated all that stuff and did that properly. Kudos to Trevor and Sam, and you know, keep up the great work. Until then, toodaloo.